A Recaro Pole Position ready to go in the S2000, and the main reason I'm installing the pole position is just to get my head lower. I myself am 6'3", and the only thing that really bothers me with the S2000 is the seating position. Anyone that's tall and owns an S2000 knows the struggle. The steering wheel that comes in these things is not adjustable. You can't adjust it out or in or up and down, so a lot of the times the tachometer is blocked by the steering wheel when you're sitting so high up. You can also not see red lights very easily with the top up, and your head sticks way above the roll hoops, so it's really unsafe for track conditions, and most tracks won't even allow you to run track days with your head sticking so far above the roll bar hoops. Alright, so as I said, I'm 6'3", and this is the stock S2000 AP1 seat. Pretty sure they're all the same, virtually almost the same for all the model year S2000. So I have it back all the way and reclined all the way. As you can see, it's mashed into the roll hoop there, the back of the seat is, and that's how I drive it everywhere. I'm going to shoot a little clip now showing how high my head is above the roll hoop. I'm going to try to take a measurement too, but doing it by myself might be a little tricky to get an accurate measurement, but it'll get the point across because I'll do the same measurement when I put the new seat in. This is the OEM height with me sitting normal. So if I put my head back like that, you can see how high my head is above the roll hoop. And I found that through many things I have a longer upper body than legs, so it's even worst case scenario for me. Alright guys, so here's my attempt at showing you how high my head is above the stock roll hoop with the stock S2000 seats. Somewhat centered on the roll hoop. Hopefully that's somewhat square. Tilt it up, I'll tilt it back a little bit. Alright, so here's the stock AP1 seat out of the car. It's very easy to take off. You got two 14mm hex head bolts in the rear and 12mm up front. So there's a 14mm bolt there, just pops out of that hole there. And in an AP1, it's great because there's only one sensor hooked up to the entire seat, and that wire is fed through this cavity between the leather and the mounting frame of the actual OEM seat, and it just runs alongside with a clip here, and then on top of the sensor connector, and then that's it. And you can swap that over to the new seat. You'll have no lights on the dash and life will be good. Alright, so the seat belt sensor is off and ready to be swapped in to the new seat. What you're going to need if you're running the stock seat belt with an aftermarket racing bucket seat is a aftermarket seat belt extender. This is from 4extender.com. It's a pretty common site I read online where people buy these extensions from. So basically you're going to mount this one to the Buddy Club seat rail and then extend this one off of it and feed this hole through the little loop in the side of the bucket seat, so you can plug the factory seat belt into the bucket seat without much of a hassle. If you didn't have the extender on the driver's side, this would be mashed in between the center console and the racing seat bolster. So it would be mashed in there. It would be a pain to buckle and unbuckle every time. You'd probably have to stick a key down into it. You wouldn't be able to reach it with your finger to unlock the seat belt, which is why you need the extender. So I got the Buddy Club rails in here, just test fitting them. They don't line up perfectly, but I guess you get what you pay for. But I'm going to actually just sit in the car on the floor for the hell of it to see how low my head is. Alright, so here's me getting in the car with no seats in it. Let's see how fit. Man, it must be nice to be short. I'd be getting on a track no problem. But with a helmet on, I'd actually come close to being too tall for the stock roll hoop still. So my plan is to mount the Recaro as low as I can and see how close I can get to getting this low in the car. Alright, so here's the brand new Recaro Pole Position N.G model. Basically what I've done so far is I just put some painter's tape where the brackets are going to be hitting, just so it doesn't scratch it up when I test fit it. These are like little stickers, like plastic stickers that come with the seat when it's brand new, that you stick on the actual fiberglass shell itself, so that it's got a washer that sits on top of that, and the washer won't mark up the shiny fiberglass. So the hardware that comes with the seat's actually pretty nice and thought out pretty well, so you don't damage the seat or anything when you install it. So this here is the Recaro hardware that comes with the seat. This one doesn't have thread locker on it because I test fitted that already and made sure the threads threaded in cleanly. But I'll explain more later of where to place all this hardware when you're installing the seat, but this is the hardware that installs between the actual fiberglass shell of the seat and the Buddy Club rail. So this right now is my setup. The Buddy Club rails are kind of just laying in the car. The side mounts here are loose. I put the taller brackets up front just from what I've seen online. And the Buddy Club picture up there that's all in foreign language is showing a diagram with the taller brackets up front, so that's what I'm going to go with to start. And the only thing I should note is I went out to Home Depot and bought my own hardware, my grade 10 hardware here, instead of using the OEM bolts, because the OEM bolts are a little too low on thread engagement. Since the Buddy Club rail thickness is a little more than the OEM mounts, you get less thread engagement and it wouldn't be as strong of a hold. So I went out and bought, up here is an M8 by 1.25 thread with a 25 or 30, I'm pretty sure, yeah, 30 millimeter length. And then I bought a flat washer that's kind of wider than the opening, since these openings are pretty wide from Buddy Club. And then a a split lock washer as well. And for the back, that's the OEM bolt, but I'm taking that out. And these are the bolts I bought for the back that are going to replace the OEM bolts, because here's the other one too. The thread engagement's not super great. It kind of bothers me, so I want to do it right. These are quite a bit longer, and this is an M10 by 1.25 pitch, and it's 25 millimeters long, I believe. This is the bolt for the rear two spots of the seat that are going to go right into the frame. So yeah, everything right now is just in there loosely. The seat belt, I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it like that because I have a seat belt extender plugged into it. But this is kind of bent sideways and it gets really tight in here. It's going to be a really pain in the ass install, I can tell right now, because there's so many spots for adjustment. The rails themselves have play to the floor with the wide slots. These, I don't know how I'm going to adjust these and tighten them when the seat's in there, because they slide in and out and back and forth a little bit. And then when you put the seat in, you're going to have adjustability in these slots here. And since these rails are separate on each side, it's going to be really tricky to get this thing squared up and slide nicely back and forth and in the right seating position. As I said before, I really want to get the seat as low as I can, so I'm going to see what I can do, the lowest spot I can mount it on these brackets here, and hopefully I'm going to be able to set the fiberglass shell touching on the carpet, and I'm going to push down as hard as I can, see what kind of notch I can get out of this, and go from there. So the only other thing I had to do, and it's a complaint I have about the Buddy Club's quality, is there's a weld on the back of this that almost touches the slot. So if you put a flat washer on there, it's going to ride crooked on the weld. So what I had to do was take a washer from Home Depot and sit there and sand the side off of it and make it flat on one side so that when I put it on, it lays flat, but also has room to clear the weld. And I'm sure each rail is going to be different with how far that weld comes out. And I mean, you can do this one of two ways. You can grind the weld down, or you can grind the washer down to make it fit. But if you try to install it at an angle, you're going to side load the bolt and it's not going to be very safe. So definitely don't want to mess up the threads in the frame of your car. Definitely not something I want to do. So I took the extra time to sand that down. I want to make sure all the flat washers are sitting flat when we go to run down these M10 bolts. Alright, so the seat is in, but it's loose right now. What I did was I pulled these brackets out as far as they could go away from the seat and tightened them down to start. The seat rail bracket bolts to the car are still loose. I just want to show you the seat belt setup. This is the extender, and right here is the OEM seat belt. So you still have the sensor that's plugged in underneath the seat. The only difference will be, since this extender is always plugged into the seat belt for the car, the light will never appear on the dash that the seat belt is not plugged in. Doesn't bother me really, but that's how much you have hanging out. So again, this is the Buddy Club Japanese looking thing. Instructions that show the taller brackets in the front of the seat rail and the shorter ones in the rear. But the main directions you really need to know. This is the instructions that come with the Recaro Pole Position seat. As you can see, this is the NG model. It's the brand new model that's FIA certified. That's the OEM Recaro brackets that come with it, but we're not using those. That's just a list of all the hardware you should got. Number 6 is the plastic protectors I showed you that are already put on the seat. Number 7 are these large washers here. 8 are these spacers. 9 are these flat washers. And then 10, of course, are the bolts. Now what I did was, these are M8 by 1.25 bolts as well, and since they're Allen key, I didn't know if I'd have enough room with the Allen wrench to get in there and tighten them based on how tight the seat is in the car. So I went out and bought a similar length screw that's an M8 1.25 pitch, just because you can get on it with a hex wrench. I have the ratcheting wrenches as well to use on those, so you can literally just go down straight and tighten them. So the instructions are very basic here. This is really the only section that really matters. It shows you the order of where to put the hardware. You basically start with your bolt on the outside of the buddy club bracket. Number 5 is the buddy club bracket. And you put your bolt through the smaller washer on the outside, and then you put the spacer in between the bracket and the large washer. So you put that there, and then you have your large washer right there. And then that thin piece right there is the sticker that I already put on the seat, and then that cross section there, number 1, is the seat. So that's the order you're going to do it. You want these spacers in there so the brackets aren't physically bent up against the seat. So we're going to go ahead and give that a try now. Alright, so I determined it was an absolute nightmare to put these bolts in when the brackets are already mounted in the car and you're trying to slide the seat in. So I'm installing the bracket, I'm leaving it slightly loose to the seat from outside of the car, and then I'm going to try to align it in the car. The only problem is now I can't get to the brackets that adjust these, and those are locked down as far out as they can go. So I'm going to try to throw it in there and see if it lines up close. If not, it's going to be a lot of taking it out and putting it back in and trying to tweak it. Before you get too far, make sure you undo the bolt at the bottom of the factory seat belt, way down here, and then feed it through this hole and then re-secure it to the factory point. Alright guys, so the seat is in and it is all tight. I'm going to be honest, it was a royal pain in the ass, but mainly because I had to teach myself all the little tips and tricks on the way of how to tweak all the brackets and everything. So I started filming this video 9 months ago, and here I am back to finish it. But to continue on, the final setup of the Recaro Pole Position, I wasn't able to use the original slots I had the seat in. As you can see here, I have to use the top rear bracket mounting point, and then up front it's on the same. It's on the 3rd from the bottom, but you can also go 2 notches higher. As you can see, I'm towards the back of the slot too to get the seat back as far as I can get it. It's on the 3rd from the bottom in the front, and also the 3rd from the bottom in the rear, which is the highest setting in the rear. The main reason for that is that the floor on that side has a bump with part of the frame. It kind of bumps up, and on the 2nd notch with the pole position, the seat bottom of the fiberglass shell actually hangs below the bracket, and when you tighten down the rails, it's actually pinching the seat to the floor, and it's impossible to slide it. So by going up 1 notch, I have about a pinky gap underneath the fiberglass shell on the far side and the floor of the car. So that's not ideal for as low as you can go. I mean, it can get a half a finger gap lower, but that lower slot is too far. So it's almost like it needs a slot in between the 2nd and 3rd to be perfect. So here's a look at the seat fully slid back, and the clearances and whatnot. You can see a lot more behind the seat than with the factory seats. You can see the shell is pushed up against the leather part, more so down here where my finger is. It's just touching that. The extended seatbelt actually works perfect. It fits me very well, and you can see the factory seatbelt over there. It's been like that for a long time now. Never had to undo it. Another issue I ran into as well is that if you use the Recaro spacers on each side of the seat, it pushes the seat brackets too wide, so that you can't, and when you mount it to the floor, it kind of bends both of them inward and it binds up the rail. So to actually get a good alignment, I replaced the spacers with a flat washer, as you can see it right in there. And that is probably 1/3 of the thickness of the spacer. So by doing that, it brought the rails, you know, probably, I'm gonna guess, 100,000ths of an inch closer to each other, and kept them straight up and down now when you bolt it to the floor. So right now I can slide the seat back and forth very easily. Like I said, I white lithium the hell out of the rails before I put them in the car, and been racing this car all year this year. I'm really behind on videos, but I'll get them up. But it's been my favorite mod to the car so far is this seat. 6'3", and it really changes the driving perspective. Feels really like a new car inside when you lower your head and sit lower in the car, and you really feel locked in with these seats. You don't slide around at all. So it's been a huge game changer for me with this car. So one last clearance thing I'll show you is the factory seat belt right here. You can see how close it is down to that mount. It's actually pinched between there a little bit. If this bracket was any further towards the edge of the car, it wouldn't work at all, but it's a very tight fit. As you can see, it's got a little wiggle room. Of course, when you slide the seat forward more than an inch, that bracket doesn't interfere with the factory seatbelt mounting point, but that also took some finagling to get in there. But overall, everything fits good. Just took a while to get there. Alright, so I'll just do a little demo here to show you guys how I get in and out of the car with the seat in there. It's really not that bad. So you just put your hand on the center console, swing your feet in, and I put my hand here, and then I try to drop straight into the seat. If you try to swivel out of the seat, you'll really wear this velour material out quick. So that's why I added the leather Recaro side protector. But even still, to preserve the seat the best, you're going to want to put your hand on the center console, put your hand here, and then just get straight up. Of course, with the top up, it's near impossible to do. So the actual way I get out of the car with the top up is pretty much just do a somersault out of the car. But then again, I never drive this car really with the top up. I really only like driving it with the top down. I can see a lot better, and that's kind of why I bought the car, is to have the top down. Alright, so I'll show you guys how easy this thing slides now. As you can see, this is fully extended backwards, and you can see how high my head is. This is with the seat cushion in. Definitely a lot lower than the factory seats for sure. And then I can just raise the Buddy Club rail here and slide it all the way up and easily slide it back. This thing feels really smooth, and when you take the time to adjust everything right, you'll get great results like I have. Everything slides nicely. You're not going to have a problem if you take the extra time up front to set it up right. Nothing's bound up, and everything's aligned perfectly. Alright, so now's the moment of truth. With the factory seat cushions in the Recaro, I could get my head lower without them, but I'm just going to do it for the regular setup here. Let's see how much my head is above the roll hoop right now. Alright, so here is the ultimate test. I have no seat cushions in the Recaro. I'm going to sit straight on the fiberglass shell, and with no helmet on, this is where I sit naturally. Now the main test is what happens when you put a helmet on. Because my main goal behind all this was to see how close I could get to getting my head with a helmet on underneath the windshield and roll bar hoops with a broomstick. And you may be wondering why I have a broomstick here. Well, a lot of tracks don't allow you to race at them unless your helmet sits below a broomstick placed between your roll hoop, and whether that be your factory roll hoop or your roll cage and the window, top of the window itself. So I'm going to go ahead and put my helmet on. And if I slouch down a little bit, I mean, it's close. There's a little wiggle room there, so that extra inch I lost from having to move the seat up one notch, because when you have it down on the second notch, it's too low and you can't slide it because it rubs against the floor. It's actually wedged against the floor. So I would say that got me about an extra inch, but this is pretty dang close. That may actually be okay at some places. I mean, I could slouch. I could lean, I could lean forward a little bit and pretend to race like this, and my head's underneath it. So, being 6'3", this worked out a lot better than I thought. And like I said, if I had the seat down one more notch, it gained me about an extra inch of headroom, but the Buddy Club rails would not slide at all. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there with the Buddy Club rails, but this is about as close as you're going to come being 6'3", with the Buddy Club rails still maintaining their sliding ability.